Yo guys, what is up? Mike's in our first Descendant video, and today we're going over my updated guide for Gley. Now, in the most recent update, they added these new mods that are allowing Descendants that couldn't spec into crit and crit hit rate easily to spec into more damage at the cost of losing crit damage and crit rate. Well, Gley could never spec well into crit hit damage, and so now Gley is just more powerful than she's ever been. Not only did Gley benefit from the new mods that buff up non-crit damage and crit hit rate, but her weapons that she uses for Massacre also got buffed by the new mods because they added new mods for the weapons that allow for weapons like the Python to spec into more damage rather than crit. And so now not only is her damage shooting up the roof, but her weapons damage as well. So her ability builds, her Massacre builds, everything is just stronger. And so I wanted to show you guys kind of what she's capable of. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let's get right into it. So the first build we're going to talk about is her full damage Massacre build. Now, with Massacre, the goal of the build was to be able to like pull out her unique weapon, her fourth ability, shoot it, and then be able to loop the third ability so that you could fire the fourth ability, Massacre, infinitely, and then go into a chain where you could pop your 3 again and just keep firing, and you could use this to take down bosses. However, what happens if we now have enough damage that we don't need to loop Massacre? We can build Gley very differently. And that's kind of what the full damage build is. Gley now has the DPS with these new mods to just kill bosses without having to worry about looping Massacre, which does a lot of interesting things. The first really interesting thing that we can do is we can use a reactor that's just full damage, because we can kill bosses now without having to loop Massacre. We're killing bosses in less than 10 seconds. We can have 10 seconds to fire her fourth ability. So for example, my reactor for the build goes from using like cooldown and duration or cooldown and damage to Colossus to just pure DPS. Python, non-attribute dimension, damage to Colossus with non-attribute boost ratio. Then for her mods, normally we have to use all these cooldown mods. We don't need cooldown mods anymore. We could just build full damage. And so what I'm going to spec out here is just pure DPS. So to start, we're going to be using Maximize Skill and Maximize Power. These both give us a way harder cooldown to manage, but once again, we're not going to be speccing cooldown. So we can go these two skills to give us as much damage as possible from her Massacre. We can also, because these are going to give us the non-specific power boost, that just means that our like new boosts are going to be even more damage. I kind of talked about spacing out your multipliers in the bunny video. The same thing applies to Gley. We're not going to want too much of like non-attribute power. If we get multiple different sources of modifier, we're going to be the best off. So we got Maximize Skill, Maximize Power, Dimension Amplification, and then we're going to use non-attribute amplification, and this is off the bat just gonna give us an absurd amount of damage. Next up, we're actually going to be using Dangerous Ambush for these boss deletes. I found this because we're downing the bosses so fast and we're basically killing them while they're downed, like half of the fight, more than half the fight, they're on the ground. Dangerous Ambush was leading us to the fastest kills that I could get here. Then we want as much duration as we can get on the fourth ability so that we can shoot it as much as possible. I actually found that instead of going for maximized duration, which loses a bit of modifier, we were able to kill basically every boss before we would run out of duration. We were having so much duration we could pre-fire them with sharp precision shot. So we're going skill extension, outstanding investment, and then for the last mods, I was rocking Iron Defense. Iron Defense gives us more skill power modifier. I found this to be more damage for this setup with our thing because we got a bunch of skill power than Spear and Shield. So Iron Defense actually wins in this setup. And then our last slots, obviously we're killing the bosses really fast. I didn't want to ever have like any like boss fails. I just wanted to consistently kill them every single time. So I actually built Battle of Stamina, which is going to give me more max HP and more duration and another HP mod. This sets us up with a ton of HP so that we can get to super low values and still have a good amount of HP. Obviously, we're getting per 10% of our HP consumed plus 10% more power. So the lower we are, the more damage we're going to deal. But if we don't build any HP, then a boss hits us once and we're dead. So for like getting the most out of this damage, I actually built 2 HP mods. The only damage mod that we are missing is a non-attribute Scintium. This gives you like 2%, 3% more damage on this build. I just didn't find it to be worth. Didn't really need it. Iron defense is more on this setup than this, and this gives us a little bit more survivability. So this is the setup that we're going to be rocking. This allows us to have a ludicrous amount of damage on Massacre. This is for solo play only. You're not going to kill a boss in 4 seconds as a 4-player group, but if you want to play Gley solo and just delete bosses faster than most characters can, this is the setup for you. Our next build is the Massacre loot build. Obviously, the big difference with this is we're going to be adding the new mods in to get more damage, but we also are going to be focusing on allowing Gley to loop Massacre so that she can continuously fire it, so that if you don't kill the boss in one magazine, you can just keep going. Now, there's a few things that we had to do here to kind of get this to work. The first thing is I wanted to have a very comfortable loop. This is right now on a 7.6 second cooldown with a 9.1 second duration. The interesting thing with Gley is you can kind of customize the build to your reactor. So like, for example, here we're kind of forced to use the 2 focus mods because if I take off one of these, all of a sudden I'm on a 10-second cooldown. And that becomes pretty unmanageable unless you have a god tier reactor, which, you know, I technically do. I have a gold duration, gold cooldown reactor, and like I could make this work, obviously, and then I could use something like power increase to get a bunch of extra damage out of this build. But I'm not going to make a build where it requires you to have gold settings or double gold rolls. Just doesn't really make sense. I'm making these builds for you guys. And so we're going to still be using focus here because I wanted to have something that is comfortable to loop, kind of regardless of your reactor. So we're going to be rocking the double focus mods, double cooldown mods. We've got non-attribute amplification and dimension amplification. We've got skill extension and maximize duration. Maximize duration does lose us a little bit of damage in modifier here. However, when we're looping, we're going to be firing our Python with sharp precision shot. Sharp precision shot, when it's at full stacks, gets a lot of damage. When we have to loop, we lose our like stacks and we have to build it back up. So maximize duration actually nets out more damage here for us. And then we've got dangerous ambush for some extra damage when the Colossus goes down. If you're going to be playing in a group, you can swap this out for walk a tightrope. And if you want more survivability, you can just kind of lose the Architect mod altogether. I don't have this catalyzed quite yet, but if you wanted to, you could just simply, I'll probably just show this on screen so it'll be easier, but if you are looking for a more survivability option, you actually just lose the Architect mod and then use, for like the consistency of the damage, you use non-attribute amplification here, and then you've got all of the survivability, all of the duration, all of the looping, and a lot of the damage. And so that will be a even comfier kind of Gley setup. I should have kind of a screenshot showing on screen right now of what that would look like. For the Python, which is our go-to weapon for Massacre, the big mod that it got is the new charge amplification mod. This gives us plus 67 firearm attack with firearm crit damage, losing out. Obviously, the Python's not a very good crit weapon, so this is perfect for us. And that is kind of allowing us to get even more damage out of the Python. When you can't go crit, you kind of run out of mods to use, so this is kind of perfect. And then I've got kind of 3 setups here for chill, fire, and electric. I'm just going to go through them real quick. But the big thing that we're going to be using on all of these is an elemental mod with a priority mod and sharp precision shot. I like sharp precision shot on my Glaze now, especially that we can kill bosses so quickly. So this is the electric setup. This is the fire setup. And this is the chill setup. I can still like make a toxic setup with this. Toxic setup fits in normally. I just didn't want to buy like another 100 module thing, but toxic fits in very nicely here. And this is the like catalyst that I've used on my Python to get all of these setups. Obviously, you do not need to catalyze all of the elements on your Python. It's definitely expensive. I think I've used 14 catalysts on my Python. So if you want to go for one setup, I would go for a setup that is going to be good across a lot of bosses. For example, fire and electric are the two most important like elements to kind of set up in terms of the amount of bosses that are weak to fire and electric. So that's what I would use. And then chill and toxic are kind of not as important. Next, we get to talk about a really awesome build for Gley, which is our 400% dungeon build. Now, I know the footage of this probably looked really cool. Just note that this is not as good as Freyna. It is not as good as Bunny, but it is really fun to see and kind of have cascading damage hitting everything around you. But you need 3 really important things to do this build, and it doesn't actually have to do with her mods or her components or her reactors. You actually want 3 weapons to complement this build. Those 3 weapons are the Thunder Cage, the Peacemaker, and the Enduring Legacy. Trust me when I say this, get these 3 weapons, use these 3 weapons if you're going to want to use these loadouts, because we are going to be using Explosive Life. Now, Explosive Life is great when you get it to start chaining, but you need to have the damage and have the AoE clear to even start this chain off in the first place. So Explosive Life reads that the chance to create a life sphere is slightly increased, detonate all nearby life spheres to deal damage instead of absorbing HP, recovers power of life based on the number of life spheres exploded. So the way that this works and the way that you're going to kind of play this build when you walk into a dungeon is you need to take out first your Thunder Cage. Your Thunder Cage, you're going to shoot some ads, and those ads will drop you some of her like life orbs. You're going to pick up those life orbs, and those will give you the enough life orbs to be able to click her second ability, right? Once you have enough life orbs to collect her second or collect this ability, then you need to kill some more enemies with your Python so that they drop life orbs on the ground that you can detonate. Once there's things that are on the ground that you can detonate and you see that you can click your ability, then you're going to swap to the Peacemaker. The Peacemaker is going to give us a ton more damage with the like Explosive Life setup. We're going to make sure that we're frenzied. And then once you get that set up, then you can start clicking your Explosive Life and it will chain through a whole room and you can wipe out tons and tons of enemies. However, this will not kill elites. Most of the time that I was running this in 400% dungeons, the elites were left alone or would get to like 3/4 or half health, and I would need a gun to finish them off, and then I would use the Enduring Legacy. That's kind of why I said that you kind of need these 3 guns. You need the Thunder Cage to set up the AoE clear to get this off the ground. You need the Peacemaker so that your Explosive Life is dealing as much damage as possible. And then you need the Enduring Legacy or a really high DPS weapon to finish off the elites and the bosses in the 400% dungeons. This damage will not do much damage to the bosses, so you need the Enduring Legacy to deal that boss damage. This is more of a trash AoE clear, and then you're going to clean up the last of the things with your Enduring Legacy. So we're going to want this on a super low cooldown, so we're going to be using MP Conversion and Nimble Fingers. That puts us down to a 2.5 second cooldown. Because this is a dimension ability, we're actually going to be rocking Multi-Talented, which is going to give us another 20% cooldown. This puts this on like a 1 second cooldown, so you can just spam it and keep the kills rolling in. We're also going to be using Maximize Range and Skill Expansion. This has a 300% max expandable range with these 2 mods. We are going to be at 286 expandable range. This is 186 plus our 100% base, so we're almost at max range. That is like great there. We're going to be using 2 HP mods. I promise you, I tried doing these 400% dungeons with 1 HP mod on Gley. It is not fun. Trust me, use 2 HP mods. And then we're going to get a metric F ton of damage from power increase with non-attribute amplification. We don't need more cooldowns. We don't need to use a focus mod. This is going to give us the like skill power and then the separate multiplier for non-attribute skill power. As we've discussed before, we're spacing out our multipliers, and then we're going to use skill simplification for a bunch of extra modifier at the cost of MP, which obviously doesn't affect Gley. We can't really fit the dimension amplification in here. I think 2 HP mods and the cooldown is just too important. So we're going to use skill simp to get the most amount of modifier that we can out of this. And that is our build guide for the like 400% dungeons. I do want to point out for the 400% dungeons / like mobbing Gley, you can just put on massive sanguification if you want to do the AoE spam with this. The build doesn't change at all. Like these are the exact same mods. So if you don't like kind of doing the power or siphon life explosion chaining and want to use massive sanguification, you can. It is significantly less damage, but, you know, it's a little bit easier to operate. You don't have to do this weird, like, gun killing. But I promise you, massive sanguification feels massively underwhelming in 400% dungeons. It just doesn't quite have the DPS. And so we are going to be rocking explosive life. I don't have the Peacemaker very set up. I actually like kind of was sleeping on this weapon, and now I've started using it on a bunch more Descendants. So I am building it out. You're going to kind of want to just build this thing for crit hit rate and crit hit damage. Right now we've got a 68% crit hit rate with a 4 times damage thing. I'm not using concentration priority on this thing because we are kind of using it a bit for mobbing. Having minus 30% reload to me just didn't feel all that great. So you got some fire rate, some mag size, some crit damage. Just slapped this in because it comes with an R slot, because every gun in the game seemingly has to come with a pointless R slot, but a little bit of accuracy does help. And then Thunder Cage and Enduring Legacy builds haven't really changed. Got the Thunder Cage set up for mobbing with Sweeping Squad, and the Enduring Legacy set up for boss melting with Sharp Precision Shot. Lastly, we've got our weapon platform build, my mods on the weapon platform build, and my mods on the executor for like Executor Gley have not changed a bit. This build is not affected because we're not building into skill power, and the executor builds very well into crit, so nothing changes there. Still really, really high DPS, but in terms of like what kills faster, Executor Gley versus Massacre, a week ago, it was Executor Gley. Executor Gley was the fastest DPS that you could get on her. Now it's actually Massacre. Massacre is killing, like, for example, I kill Pyromancer on Gley with the Executor in about 12 seconds, and with Massacre, we can kill Pyromancer in 6 seconds. It is just absurd the amount of damage that she's able to do with these new mods. These are all of the catalyst slots I've put on Gley. If you want to copy all of the builds that I've done, definitely used a fair bit of catalyst. She wants a lot of M slots now. Prioritizing, catalyzing a bunch of M slots should probably be your first priority, because everything that she does from cooldown to damage is all M slots. So we've got a lot of M slots there, and I technically even need to recatalyze this X for an M slot for that like proposed build that I was showing you. For the weapon platform build, I like using the Annihilation set. For Massacre, you can either use Slayer or Annihilation. I like Annihilation because it's more cozy with Sharp Precision Shot. For the extra duration, it's easier to loop. For the like pure full damage, just Giga, we don't care about cooldown. I was using the Slayer set. Both are really good. I'd recommend using Annihilation over Slayer for most scenarios, but if you're really trying to like Giga max, the Slayer set is pretty gross at giving you some even more damage, which is very nice on her. And that is our guide on Gley. Guys, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Right now, I have finished our Ultimate Ajax update. So Ultimate Ajax update should be up next. And then let me know if you would want to see. I kind of want to do a updated Eugen build or an Essimo guide. Both of those characters got massively improved from the changes with these like new mods. Basically every character that didn't build into crit got massive buffs. And so let me know what you'd like to see next, but should be Ultimate Ajax next up on deck. That's gonna do it for the video, guys. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.